What if everything you thought you knew about Dominik Mysterio and Liv Morgan was just the surface? What if underneath all the championship matches, the crowd reactions, the promos, and the drama there was something deeper, something that even the most dedicated wrestling fans completely missed? Well, buckle up, because today we're diving into a revelation that has the entire wrestling world buzzing, debating, and completely losing their minds. Dominik Mysterio just made a shocking reveal about Liv Morgan, and trust me when I tell you by the end of this video, you are going to see this entire storyline in a completely different light. Stay with me, because this one is going to take you on a ride. Welcome back to Wrestling Impact, the channel where we don't just talk about wrestling, we live it, breathe it, and break it all the way down for you. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now because you do not want to miss what's coming. And for my ride or die Wrestling Impact family, you already know. Let's get into it. Now, to truly understand the magnitude of what Dominik Mysterio just revealed, we have to go back. We have to rewind the tape and look at this entire dynamic from the very beginning, because context is everything in professional wrestling. And this story? This story has layers upon layers that most people glossed right over. Let's start with Dominik Mysterio's transformation. When this young man first stepped onto the main roster, people saw him as exactly what his last name suggested: Rey Mysterio's son. The kid who grew up ringside. The teenager who got put through a table by Seth Rollins in one of the most emotionally charged segments in recent memory. The boy who was trying to carve out his own identity in a world dominated by legends and his own legendary father. For a long time, there was sympathy for Dominik. There was this sense that the wrestling world was watching a young man trying to find himself. And then everything changed. The heel turn. The moment Dominik Mysterio turned his back on his father at Clash at the Castle and aligned himself with the Judgment Day, that was the moment the wrestling universe felt the ground shift beneath their feet. The boos were thunderous. The betrayal felt real. And suddenly, Dominik Mysterio wasn't just Rey's son anymore. He was his own character. Dark, entitled, arrogant, manipulative, and absolutely electric every single time he stepped in front of a camera or walked through the curtain. And then came Liv Morgan. Now, Liv Morgan has had one of the most fascinating career trajectories in recent history. She went from fan favorite, from the girl the crowd absolutely adored, to picking up the Women's World Championship and doing something nobody saw coming. She aligned herself with Dominik Mysterio. She became the one person outside of Judgment Day who seemed to have this inexplicable pull on DOM. And the dynamic between these two? It was appointment television every single week. But here's where it gets complicated. Here's where the lines between the character and the story start blurring in the most fascinating way possible. Because the question that the entire wrestling world has been asking, what exactly is going on between Dominik Mysterio and Liv Morgan, was just answered. And the answer? Nobody was fully prepared for it. In a recent interview and in a promo segment that has since gone absolutely viral across every wrestling platform imaginable, Dominik Mysterio made a statement that peeled back the curtain on the entire dynamic he shares with Liv Morgan. And what he revealed wasn't what people expected. It wasn't a simple "she's using me" or "I'm using her." It wasn't the typical wrestling narrative of one person playing another. What Dominik revealed was something far more psychologically complex, and if you've been paying close attention to every single interaction these two have had, it all suddenly makes perfect sense. Dominik essentially admitted that Liv Morgan understands him in a way that nobody else in professional wrestling does. Think about that for a second. This is a young man who has been rejected by his father on screen, who has been booed by crowds who once cheered for him as a child, who has been mocked, ridiculed, called a mama's boy, called a coward, and every other name you can think of. And in the middle of all of that noise, Liv Morgan sees something in him. Not the version everyone else sees. Something different. Now here's what makes this revelation absolutely explosive. Dominik didn't just say this in passing. The way he delivered it, the weight behind the words, the uncharacteristic drop of the smug, entitled mask he usually wears in every single promo, it caught everyone off guard. For just a moment, Dirty Dom wasn't performing arrogance. He was being vulnerable. And vulnerability from a heel character of Dominik Mysterio's caliber? That is rare. That is special. And the wrestling world noticed immediately. Social media erupted within minutes. Wrestling fans were flooding every platform with reactions ranging from shock to admiration to outright confusion. Some fans felt like they had just witnessed something genuinely emotional break through the scripted world of professional wrestling. Others immediately began theorizing about what this means going forward for both characters. And a significant portion of the fanbase, particularly those who have followed this dynamic closely, felt a strange sense of validation, like they had been right all along about the depth of this storyline. But let's slow down and really analyze what this reveal means, because there are multiple layers here that deserve to be explored fully. First, let's talk about Dominik Mysterio as a performer. The character work this young man has done over the past couple of years has been nothing short of remarkable. He came in as a babyface who the crowd liked by association, and he has methodically built a heel character that generates genuine heat, which, in the modern wrestling landscape, is genuinely difficult to do. Real heat. The kind where people aren't just groaning, they're emotionally invested in wanting to see him get his comeuppance. That takes skill. That takes dedication. And the nuance he showed in this reveal suggests that there is far more depth to his character work than even his biggest critics have given him credit for. Second, let's talk about what this means for Liv Morgan's character. Because Liv Morgan's own transformation has been equally compelling. She went from a beloved underdog who the crowd wanted to see succeed, to a champion who completely embraced a darker, more manipulative persona without ever fully losing the charm that made people love her in the first place. That balance is incredibly hard to maintain. You can't be too villainous or you lose the entertainment value that comes from charisma. You can't be too likable or the heel work falls flat. Liv Morgan has been walking that tightrope brilliantly. And now, with this revelation from Dominik about the nature of their connection, her character takes on a whole new dimension too. Is Liv Morgan genuinely someone who sees potential in Dominik that others overlook? Or is this the most sophisticated long con in recent wrestling memory, where she has made him feel understood, feel seen, feel valued, all in service of her own ambitions and championship goals? That question right there is what makes this storyline so incredibly compelling, because honestly it could be either one. Or it could be both simultaneously. And that ambiguity is storytelling gold. Let's imagine for a moment the scenes that have played out between these two characters over the past several months through this new lens. Every time Dominik looked at Liv Morgan with that subtle expression that wasn't quite the typical heel sneer, that wasn't arrogance, that was something more complicated, it takes on new meaning now. Every time Liv Morgan advocated for Dominik, stood beside him, whispered in his ear before matches, celebrated his victories with a kind of genuine enthusiasm that seemed almost too real to be pure strategy, it all looks different now. There is a promo, and wrestling fans will know exactly which one I'm referring to, where Dominik is talking about his legacy and his path forward, and there is this moment, just a few seconds, where the camera catches him looking at Liv Morgan with an expression that is completely unguarded. It lasts less than 3 seconds. Most people blinked and missed it. But that moment, combined with this recent revelation, suggests that whatever creative minds are crafting this storyline, they have been building towards something far bigger and far more emotionally resonant than a simple authority figure and subordinate relationship. Now, let's talk about the fan reaction, because the wrestling universe has been divided in the most fascinating way. On one side, you have the fans who are absolutely here for this dynamic. These are the viewers who appreciate long-term character development. The fans who loved the slow burn. The fans who have been saying for months that there is something genuinely compelling about two characters who are supposed to be villains finding some kind of authentic connection, even if that connection exists within the morally ambiguous world they've both chosen to inhabit. For these fans, this reveal was the payoff they didn't know they were waiting for. On the other side, you have the skeptics. The fans who believe this is simply excellent character work designed to humanize a heel at a strategic moment. That this reveal is timed perfectly to set up a future betrayal where either Dominik betrays Liv or Liv betrays Dominik in spectacular fashion, making this moment of apparent vulnerability the cruelest possible setup for an even more devastating heel move. And you know what? Those fans might be absolutely right. Because if there is one thing professional wrestling has taught us, it's that the moment you let your guard down is the moment the rug gets pulled. And then there is the third group, perhaps the most interesting group of all, the fans who don't care whether it's real within the story or not. The fans who simply appreciate that two performers are delivering genuinely engaging, emotionally complex work week after week, and that this reveal has elevated the entire storyline to a new level. These fans are showing up every week not just to see matches. They're showing up to see what happens next between Dominik Mysterio and Liv Morgan. And that is the highest compliment you can pay to any wrestling storyline. Let's also address something that has been swirling around in wrestling circles since this reveal dropped: the question of what this means for Dominik Mysterio's relationship with the Judgment Day. Because that faction dynamic has been one of the most talked about elements of his character arc. The push and pull between his loyalty to that group and his individual journey has never been fully resolved. And now, with this admission about his connection to Liv Morgan, a woman who operates outside of that faction structure, there is a fault line that creative could exploit at any moment. Think about it. If Dominik Mysterio genuinely feels a connection to Liv Morgan that transcends the political dynamics of professional wrestling factions, then that connection becomes a vulnerability. It becomes a pressure point. It becomes the exact kind of emotional thread that a storytelling team could pull to unravel everything DOM has built over the past 2 years. A man who has carefully constructed walls, who performs coldness and arrogance as armor, who has kept everyone at a distance, suddenly admitting that one person has gotten through? That is the kind of narrative dynamite that, when the fuse finally hits, creates the most memorable moments in professional wrestling. And let's not forget the Rey Mysterio dimension of all of this. Because Rey Mysterio is still out here. Still competing. Still carrying the weight of a fractured relationship with his son every single time they share a screen. This revelation from Dominik doesn't exist in a vacuum. If Dominik is admitting that Liv Morgan understands him, what does that say about everyone else in his life? What does that say about his family? About his father? Those questions add yet another emotional layer to an already deeply layered story. If you were sitting ringside at a show and you heard Dominik make this admission, and then you watched Rey Mysterio's face, the emotion on that man's face when he looks at his son would tell you everything you need to know about the stakes of this entire narrative. This isn't just about championships. This isn't just about who is aligned with who. This is about a family. About a son who felt overshadowed. About a father who loves his child and watches helplessly as that child makes choices that break his heart. And in the middle of all of that there is Liv Morgan, the wild card. The woman who may or may not be the key to either Dominik's salvation or his ultimate downfall. Professional wrestling at its absolute best makes you feel things. It makes you invest in characters the way you invest in characters in your favorite television dramas. It makes you care about outcomes beyond just who wins or loses a match. And right now, the Dominik Mysterio and Liv Morgan dynamic is achieving exactly that. This reveal has people talking, speculating, debating, and most importantly showing up to see what happens next. Now, what happens next is the million-dollar question. And Wrestling Impact has some thoughts. If the creative team is truly playing the long game, and all signs suggest they absolutely are, then this moment of vulnerability from Dominik is either the beginning of a redemption arc that brings him back toward the light, or it is the most carefully laid trap in recent wrestling memory, designed to give audiences hope before crushing it completely. Either outcome is compelling. Either outcome delivers on the emotional investment that fans have made in these characters. A redemption arc would see Dominik slowly distance himself from the more destructive elements of his heel character, using his connection with Liv Morgan as the bridge back towards something more heroic, potentially leading toward a reunion with his father that would bring the entire wrestling world to its feet. The emotional payoff of that story could be one of the most powerful moments in recent memory. Father and son, separated by years of bitterness and betrayal, finally finding their way back to each other. The crowd would be electric. The tears would be real. A betrayal scenario, on the other hand, would see this reveal weaponized in the most devastating way possible. Imagine Dominik using his own vulnerability as bait, drawing Liv Morgan into a false sense of security before revealing that he understood the game all along, that he never needed her understanding, that he never needed anyone. That would be a heel move for the ages, and it would cement Dominik Mysterio as one of the most compelling villains in recent wrestling history. And this is the scenario that wrestling fans dream about. The story goes somewhere completely unexpected. Somewhere neither of those paths lead. Somewhere that surprises even the most experienced wrestling analyst and delivers a moment that nobody saw coming. Because the very best wrestling does exactly that. It honors your investment in the story and then rewards you with something you didn't even know you wanted. Whatever happens next, one thing is absolutely certain. Dominik Mysterio's reveal about Liv Morgan has changed the landscape of this storyline forever. There is no going back to the version of this dynamic that existed before those words were said. The curtain has been pulled back. The emotional stakes have been raised. And the wrestling world is watching. Wrestling Impact will be right here, every step of the way, breaking it all down for you with the depth and passion that this community deserves. Because stories like this, stories with real emotional weight, real character development, real stakes, are exactly why we love this sport. Why we've loved it for years. Why we'll love it for years to come. If this video gave you goosebumps. If this video made you think about this storyline in a completely different way. If you have a theory about where Dominik and Liv are headed, and I know you do, drop it in the comments right now. I want to read every single one of them. Let's build this conversation together. because the Wrestling Impact community has some of the sharpest wrestling minds on this platform and your perspective matters. Hit that like button if you believe this storyline is only just getting started. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you never miss a breakdown like this one. Because trust me, the next chapter of this story is coming. And when it hits, Wrestling Impact will be the first place you want to be. Stay passionate, stay invested, and never stop loving professional wrestling.